I did a draft for Spielberg with Jim Carrey attached.
Come on.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So I had to do a total rewrite and just kind of make it Jim Carrey-like, and I took, the structure stayed mostly the same, but I wrote some set pieces that were more physical and wacky. And
did you meet with him also when you were writing?
Yeah, I met him a couple times. I have some cool stories about that.
And hey, everybody, have you seen Meet the Parents or Meet the Fockers? You know, two of the biggest comedies of all time? Well, guess what? Jim, he's seen them too. And also he happened to write them.
Yes. But I don't watch my own stuff that much. So
really?
Most people have seen it more than me.
Really?
Probably.
I think I've seen Meet the Parents. Every time it's on TV somewhere, I see it. You know what I'm saying?
That's
so
not
good
a bad
on you.
thing, yeah.
That's great.
And if I'm flipping channels and I catch it, then I maybe watch a little bit. But
Meet the Parents. What about that? Like, how did that come about? Because I know some other people had done a draft a little while before, and then how did it come about?
There was an existing short-ish film.
Yeah.
Done by some people from Chicago. Steven Soderberg and Nancy Tenenbaum, who produced Sexualized Videotapes. They caught a wind of it and made a deal to shop it, to figure out if there was a way to turn it into a feature film. And they wound up at Universal. And I got called to look at it. It's out there, I think. If anybody's really that interested, I think you could probably dig it up.
The original?
Yeah, but...
Was it a short, you said? Or
it was not really, because it was like 40-something minutes, I think.
Oh, okay.
Look, the concept of a guy goes to meet his future in-laws and things don't go well.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I kept the title just because it seemed fine.
Yeah.
And I even kept the guy's name, Greg.
A great name, by the way, to keep.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to keep anything in there.
It's really kind of where the similarities end.
And then everything else you came up with and...
Yeah, I mean, the main thing I did that got me the job was a couple of things. Because the short film was very episodic. There was there's a little bit at stake in that, the guy is hoping to impress the parents.
Right.
But then there was no structure to it. It was just kind of one kind of episodic little gag.
Right.
And so my thought was, look, if you're going to go and visit somebody's family for the first time, how can you load that up structurally so that there's always something going on and there have to be places and there's expectations and
a lot of obstacles.
So I put in, he was, going to propose and then didn't get to, and then very quickly gets invited to meet her family at her younger sister's wedding. Then I built from there, because then wedding weekend has structure already. Like you got to be places and there's guests coming.
Sure, smart.
Then I just started to think about, all right, well, what's like the worst possible situation to be in within, without tonally going off the rails, which is kind of what the short film did. And a lot of bad movies that try these things, they go big and they, that's never been my deal.
Right. Well, they started 8 years ago. Like that short was like years before you did the feature, yeah? Like 92 and the feature came out in 2000?
I couldn't tell you the date of the feature. The short that it was based on.
It's my research. I saw it.
Okay.
Take me at the word.
You know more than I do. Probably, possibly it was 92. That seems a long time.
Yeah.
But from the time I wrote the first draft and the time we got, the actors and got a green light was probably 2 years, which is not bad.
No, that's pretty good, actually.
I think it was probably like from 96 or 7 to 98 or 9.
Right, and then you filmed it
and then we shot it and it came out in 2000.
Wow.
But the big thing that I also came up with that seemed to really help get it made was that I said, what would be horrible is if your potential future father-in-law is either is he a former CIA guy? Maybe he's still in the CIA, but he's a human lie detector.
Right, great.
And anytime you start to say something that's maybe sketchy, he's going to just laser in on you. And then also to have a lot of cameras in the house. Like I just kind of said, this was fairly early.
This is before...
People didn't have a lot of cameras around their homes.
Right.
So it was really the only thing that I was aware of at that time was, people having cameras that they wanted in their babies' rooms and stuff.
Right,
and then sometimes they would hide them. It would be a hidden camera because sadly enough, people were occasionally wondering if the babysitter was beating the shit out of their kid.
Of course.
So you'd have a cute little teddy bear sitting there while your child's being thrashed. So then I just kind of, leaned into all that stuff. But that's what got De Niro interested.
Yeah, now he was the producer on it also.
Yeah, he's a producer on everything.
Right. Is Jane more than
Jane Rosenthal actually?
That's his partner.
She took it to him actually.
Okay.
So, and I don't know how Jane got it, but the funny thing is, I mentioned Nancy Tenenbaum already, who was Steven Soderbergh's producing partner. I talked to her on the phone a couple times, but we've never met.
Oh, really?
Never met. No, she's an East Coast person, and she was in on it early, and then she, gave her 2 cents on the draft. I wrote a draft for Soderbergh. He said, "This is hilarious, and it's too commercial for me. I'm going to pass." And then he went and immediately did Out of Sight, and Aaron Brockovich, and suddenly was making commercial movies.
Oh, yes.
But when he read my script, he was still like, "No, I'm the cool indie guy."
Yeah, exactly. I did Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
Yes. I was glad I met Soderbergh, and he was helpful in some ways that I can't quite remember. I remember he was a smart guy. When I would talk through some stuff with him, he had good ideas, but I honestly couldn't specifically tell you what he contributed to the process. Right. We had a lot of interesting back and forth with directors. Very early, Jay Roach got a copy of one of my early drafts. Yeah, he had just done Austin Powers. And he very much wanted it to be his next movie. Wow. And then I saw Austin Powers. I went, "This is hilarious." And then Jay came to my house, oddly enough. He's a wonderful guy. We're still friends. But he came to the writer's house to see if the writer could help him get the job or something.
Hilarious.
And I was like, "Jay, I would love for you to do it, but there's nothing I can do or say." So then I don't really know what happened in that interim period where Jay said, "I want to do this." And I was going, "Jay's great. Let's do it with Jay." And then the executives are like,
crazy.
So I don't know why that was, but there was some hesitancy. During that hesitancy at Universal, somebody slipped it to Spielberg. Bob Cooper actually did, who used to run DreamWorks for him. And Spielberg flipped and loved it.
Can you imagine if he would have directed it?
I did a draft for Spielberg with Jim Carrey attached.
Come on!
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I had to do a total rewrite and just kind of make it Jim Carrey-like, and the structure stayed mostly the same, but I wrote some set pieces that were more physical and wacky. And
did you meet with him also when you were writing?
Yeah, I met him a couple times. I have some cool stories about that. But so Jay Roach was out of the picture. He went off and did something called Mystery Alaska, which was a David Kelly script about a hockey team in the Northwest or somewhere, Alaska or something. Yeah. Spielberg, by the way, gave me a big overall deal at DreamWorks. That was nice.
Wow.
While I was working with Spielberg and Jim Carrey, I noticed first of all, Spielberg said to me a couple times, I really want to make this, but I tried a comedy once, and he would kind of cringe.
Yeah.
He said about 1941.
Yeah,
I saw 1941 definitely once, but
I've seen it a bunch of times. I actually enjoy it.
I didn't think it was so bad. Spielberg is such an icon, and he doesn't fail much.
No, he does not like to talk about that movie at all.
That a failure.
Yes,
but I feel like he was going to be like, okay, now I'll show everybody that I can do comedy. Everybody that knows that Spielberg and Carrey were attached, and then people that know how Meet the Parents turned out, a lot of them have said, "Oh, trust me, it turned out so much better this way."
It would have been a very different movie.
And it's it's like an alternative universe thing.
Right?
Like, could Spielberg and Carrey have hit it out of the park?
Probably, but it'd be a different movie.
Maybe. I mean, I still had most of the set pieces are still in there, and the stuff that people talk about, that was all on the page. So I don't think Spielberg would have screwed that up.
When did Ben Stiller come on?
Well, when we got De Niro first.
And he was new to comedy. He had only done Analyze This. But then like a year before this. That's why I was so close to him. I was like, do you still believe in him?
Yeah, I mean, suddenly they were thinking about him for comedies. He got very excited about the CIA stuff. So that was it. If I hadn't written that the dad was a CIA guy, we wouldn't have got De Niro.
Wow.
So then Spielberg had mentioned that he was a little nervous about the comedy, but he'd also just come off of Saving Private Ryan, and he'd done a couple.
Not that funny, I have to admit it.
But the same guy who punched up Schindler's List offered to do it.
Oh, really?
But he'd come off so many movies in a row and he just had a baby with Kate Capshaw. Destry. She's funny because Destry is, when I saw her, she was this big. We would meet at Spielberg's place, work there, and Kate would come by a little bit, and she'd have the baby, and then she and Steven would have, friendly conversation, then she'd leave to go back to the main house. And then Steven would sigh sometimes, and he says, "I want to try to make this summer, but she wants me to take a break."
Wow. And, Kate Capshaw.
And and then he goes, but she's not wrong. We have the new baby. I've done whatever he said, 3 movies in 5 years or whatever it was. And he goes, and she really wants me to relax and not do something this summer. And I really wanted to do this summer. So, well, I have to work that part out, he would say.
Wow.
So then that was when my little oh shit, here we go.
Yeah.
Between that and him being a little
tentative,
worried about his comedy chops. So sure enough, even though Spielberg was very happy with the drafts, and Jim Carrey was as well, Steven finally said, we're gonna pass. And then Jim Carrey said, well, shit, I really wanted to be in a Spielberg movie, so I'm out.
He never was in a Spielberg movie to this day, has he?
No.
Wow. But do you realize if Spielberg did this movie and it was obviously a huge success, you may not have gotten the rest of his. He may have stuck to comedy. He may be doing comedies right now.
You think there'd be no Judd Apatow? It just would have been Spielberg?
It would have been Spielberg. There was no Judd Apatow. I'm joking. Judd is amazing.
Then they went back to Jay. And then we went off to New York and met with DeNiro and all that stuff. And so.
Okay, but then you also have story credit also and screenplay credit on Fockers.
Yeah.
You did even more work on that one than the first one, yeah?
Hard to say, because that was, in the interim between Parents coming out and then we knew we were going to do Fockers. In fact, one of the things Spielberg said to me when he read the draft was, he goes, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. He's going through it and talking about what he loved about it. And then he gets toward the end and he goes, and you've got the sequel. And I'm like, oh yeah? Because I'd actually written the last line, and the script was, now there's one thing, after they're together, he goes, now there's only one thing left to do. And she says to Greg, and Greg goes, yeah, what's that? And she says, or maybe he says it, I forget, but somebody says, meet your parents.
Yeah.
So maybe somebody does this. I would never have the audacity to write something, get done, and go, and I've set up the sequel.
Oh yeah, it's tough.
Because lucky if anybody even makes it to begin with, and it's good enough to have a sequel. So I just thought that just felt like an organic kind of way to end the movie.
Did you write Fockers with Barbra Streisand and Dustin Hoffman in mind?
No, of course not.
No. Okay. Did you tailor
we just knew they had to be kind of like
old yentas.
Just Florida liberal.
Right.
Just don't really give a
Right.
I mean, that they just live just kind of a bohemian, I don't want to say hippie, but kind of like a lifestyle where it's like somebody's going to walk into the kitchen and their bathrobe's not quite closed.
Right.
They don't care.
And they don't care.
And then, some of the stuff was at some point was pitched for, maybe she should be a sex therapist for senior citizens.
Yeah.
Again, I never want to lean into that stuff too hard because it starts to feel too jokey.
Feels like a third, like a second sequel to it instead of the first sequel when you start to have the...
Well, look, Fockers box office wise and everything, and people actually, oddly enough, recognize Meet the Fockers more than Meet the Parents.
Meet the Fockers did like $527 million, which is $200 million more than Parents did, which is crazy. That's like $840 million. Those two movies that you wrote made.
Yeah, they made almost $1 billion.
Yeah.
And then you throw in Little Fockers, which I had nothing to do with, but then the trilogy's up over, $1 billion.
Were you too much for that? They would have to pay you too much money to do that one there?
No, it took so long, and I never thought it was the best idea.
Right.
And then they got Larry Stuckey, who was Jay's assistant, good guy, but he was kind of a newbie writer, and so it took a while for him to crack it.
Yeah.
I was off writing a million other things, so, and also John Hamburg was in the equation as well.
Yep.
He's Ben's guy, and Ben brought him on to do, interstitial stuff on Parents, and then
Gotcha.
And then John's got a good hand in Fockers. Fockers is, easily split creatively with me and Hamburg. Parents is mostly mine, but Hamburg's got some stuff in Fockers. I mean, I got Story by John didn't because of some of the structural stuff is mine.
Right.
But as far as just pages and stuff, it's fairly even there. At one point, there was a lot of people weighing in on Fockers.
Oh, I can imagine.
That's what happens.
They all want to have a piece
successful
of it.
Sequel.
Yep.
They start with the people that usually had the initial success, and then they're not shy about bringing in any number of other people.
Yeah.
In fact, we just mentioned Judd. Judd was involved at one point in a discussion about it. Threw some ideas around. Getting Mark Hyman also, who I knew from comedy writing. He actually is mostly responsible for some of the kids stuff, the baby stuff.
Can you milk cat's nipples?
That's me.
That was you. Did you ever try to milk a cat's nipples, Jim?
There'd be really no reason to do that from a research perspective.
Okay.
You can just kind of write it and assume that people know you can milk a cat.
Oh, I I didn't realize.
I don't think I had to prove that before I put it on the page.
You talked about Apatow. Now, did you meet him? Because you also worked on, like, as a co-producer of the groundbreaking It's Scary Shandling show.
I wasn't a co-producer at all. I was just a writer, but I wasn't even in the guild yet. So they
had to
me
give
a
you
researcher title.
Oh, well, I think they gave you, yeah.
So actually,
different
if you
credit
see the first or second season, you'll see my name under researcher.
Oh.
But that was kind of what they did before people were in the guild.
Right.
I got paid, my first TV show staff paycheck, so that was nice to have a regular.
What an iconic show, though. Everybody who was huge in comedy came from it. Remember anything crazy that went on in the writers' room, or?
Well, I mean, some of the writers that I worked with on that show, Alan Zweibel, of course, and Gary, and then Sam Simon, Jeff Franklin, Neil Pomerantz, who was an old guy, Jack Burns, who used to be Burns and Schreiber, but also was George Carlin's comedy partner for a long time.
Brilliant.
And then Max and Tom, Gamble and Pross had come off of SNL and Letterman.
Well, those guys, ironically, they had a pilot called Helmet Heads that I actually tested for.
Oh, yeah?
It was a very funny pilot. Obviously, I probably made it funnier. They didn't go with me. It didn't get made. I'm not saying one led to the other.
They've had a couple pilots over the years, but I mean, they're bread and butter guys with The Simpsons and some other.
Seinfeld and Simpsons, two of the biggest shows. And speaking of Simpsons, you also worked on Married with Children for a season, did you not?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I worked on it for season 9 or 10 or something.
Right.
And I wanted to keep a foot in television, but I was writing features at the same time.
Right.
So I was a consulting producer. I said, I can't be in there 5 days a week. So I think I had to be in there 3 days a week. I think I went Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays we shot.
Nice cushy schedule.
It was not cushy at all. That's
not cushy.
Point.
It's opposite.
It was too much work. Only gig.
Right.
But I would literally be, working on 1 or sometimes 2 features, and then I'd have scripts piling up from Married with Children that I'd have to read for next week, and then it just became too
And because it was later in its seasons, you had to actually try to be extra creative to do things that hadn't been done before. And all
there was a bit of that, where I would pitch stuff, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's hilarious! We did that season 4."
Right. Do your research, Jim. When you got on our show.
So and I really just didn't have the time to look at prior 200 episodes.
You didn't. Oh, yeah, exactly. They did so many. That show and Simpsons single-handedly, well, not single, there's 2 hands there. Those 2 saved the fledgling Fox network. Everything else was dying on that show, on that network. Those 2, if it wasn't for one or both of those, there'd be no Fox to this day.
Married with Children created the foundation for Fox to go a couple of years, and then The Simpsons came along after.
Oh, that's right. It is. So 87, I think, it started, that being Married with Children. It was like very different from ABC, CBS. I mean, it's like, wait a minute, you can't say this kind of stuff.
The pilot was originally titled Not the Cosbys.
Right.
It was interesting. I have some cool memories of that show, but
give us one memory. It's been around for, and that guy, Al Bundy. Yeah, I'm thinking of Ted Bundy mixed with Al Bundy. Al Bundy, who went on, who worked so much in TV and film and back again in TV.
Ed O'Neill. When we would have read-throughs, you tend to always kind of sit in the same seats, and I just always happened to be next to Christina and
so talented. But David Faustino, very nice guy. I met him. He used to come to the house. Very cool kid.
So some of my memories were just kind of like sort of eavesdropping on the 2 of them talking.
Oh, they had a good relationship?
Yeah, they were literally like a brother and a sister. Here's a good one from casting. Well, because I was at the producer level, so I got to go in on casting sessions for Married with Children. But, Married with Children was, especially in the later seasons, they fell into a kind of a groove of stunt casting with Playmates and the like.
Oh, yes. I remember
so a lot of, jiggle casting, if you will.
Yeah.
So one thing that was funny was, we shot on the Sony lot, which used to be the MGM lot, of course. Mm-hmm. And they named a lot of the buildings on the lot after iconic directors and whatnot. Right. In the casting session, you would cast 3 or 4 different of the walk-on roles or whatever all at once. They'd all come in like for 3 hours, and they'd all read the 1 or 2 lines, and then they'd leave. And then you'd have to make almost a completely random decision, because it's just like a woman in the supermarket wearing a mini skirt, and Al's got to pick up something for Peg, and so they have a moment next to the fruit stand or whatever. It's just right. So that wasn't like high art, but it was. We were giving the people what they wanted. There was a parade of, let's just be honest, either actual bimbos or women who were there trying to be a bimbo.
Oh,
but one of them walked in. And to the casting session, we were in our building, and she had her drive-on pass and everything. And she goes, "Oh my God, I'm so excited to be here. Which one of you is David Lean?" Because we were in the David Lean building, of course. The David Lean of Lawrence of Arabia and other
famous director
epic
from the
movies.
60s.
So we all had a good laugh at that.
Oh, wow.
And she had no idea why we were laughing. And I think one of us actually said that'd be me.
Yeah.
On a related note, Faustino.
Yes. Bud Bundy.
Who was, I would guess he was over 18, but maybe not even 21.
Oh, okay.
He would sometimes, especially if it was a casting session for a romantic role.
He wouldn't happen to stop by.
That, like the girl he was going to be pursuing in that episode or whatever.
Right, yeah.
He absolutely would kind of drop in and try. And it was pretty much, sometimes if it was only in a couple of lines,
right,
he would say, "Boy, I really want you to cast her," because he wanted to get with her.
Yes.
And sometimes we would all, after the casting session, we'd look at each other and we'd be like, "Yeah, I don't know, that other girl was really good, but Faustino wants to bang that one. So let's give him, let's throw him that."
It was a different time. It was a different time.
Yeah. So there you go. If you were a struggling actress and that was your one audition that month and you were so excited and you thought you were going to get Married with Children and you didn't, it might be because Bud Bundy wanted to bang somebody else.
Yeah, that's going to be our headline here on this. Speaking of aspiring actors, what about aspiring screenwriters? What advice would you give somebody who's like starting out right now that doesn't want to go the AI route?
I don't think you have a choice whether you're going to go the AI route. I think AI is going to decide that for you.
Oh. Yeah, probably.
I don't know. It's a weird time because here's the thing. I worked on a lot of sitcoms after Shandling and before Married with Children. And these are sitcoms that most people wouldn't even remember. But I was still on a sitcom staff on a major network where we would get a 22 episode order.
Yeah.
And they would pay X amount per episode and you get a couple scripts and you would make, really good money.
6 figures.
Well, definitely 6 figures, yeah. I mean, but, you would be making as much as a thoracic surgeon or the like.
Yeah, like $300,000.
Yeah, back in the 90s.
Back in the 90s, which today is, $3 million.
You could make good money.
Almost.
So the point is when you finally managed to be good enough to get staffed, that was like it. You felt like, well, now I have a career. Now that work will make work and I'll go from show to show. And that was usually the case. If you didn't suck, even if your show went down, your scripts were good, your agents were working it, and you would go to another show and you could do that for 5, 10, 20 years, who knows?
Yeah.
And that would be, you could buy a house in LA and you could
what about now?
Build your pension and all that. So now, I haven't been working in television, but most people do work in television. And it's apparently this is why we're on strike. Yeah. It's just no longer the golden ticket that it was. You can work your ass off and get lucky and be one of the few that gets chosen to be on a show as a staff writer. But now it's a mini room. There's only 4 of you. There's only 6 or 8 episodes. It's a streamer. They're paying you the Writers Guild minimum, but maybe even if they're paying more than that, it's kind of a moot point because you get paid per episode. Yeah. There's only 6 or 8 episodes already. Like I said, it was 22 episodes back when I was doing it, and they would sign you up for 13 and then the back 9 if the show was good and they still wanted you. So suddenly, and then you're exclusive now, and you have to sign up for a streamer, and they go, you can't work anywhere else. And you go, yeah, of course not, but you're in the mini room, and they're taking their time because you don't have a fall schedule like the networks used to have, where the show's got to be ready and out for viewing in September. So they might say, hey, we've got 6 episodes. They don't need it for 6 months. We're going to just kind of take it at episode a month approximately. So come on in and put in and hang around, and when we need you, we'll throw you pages and maybe you help us with them. But they're not giving you a script because there's only 6 or 8 episodes, and frankly, the creators and the EP are going to be able to do that and take that money. So, and then if you don't write a script, then you don't ultimately get a residual, and so it just becomes a job that everybody seems to want, and it's very hard to get. But really, if you get into a situation like I just said, where it's a six episode commitment and it drags out over 6 months, even getting paid a little above the Writers Guild minimum, you're making the same money as a guy working at Home Depot. So nothing against the Home Depot folks. Being a television writer, a staffed writer was supposed to be like the Olympics of writing, and to get there was very hard.
Yeah, it's very hard now to survive if you...
Yeah, so they have to figure out how to change that because the landscape is different. So then how does the Writers Guild pivot, and what do we negotiate to try to make it so that what I just described isn't the case?
Are they going to get most of the stuff they're asking for?
They're going to get a lot of it. Yeah. But this is the third strike for me. I struck in 88, I struck in 08, or 07, 08. Yep. I'm on strike now. And it seems to always follow the same pattern, which is they don't talk for 2 to 3 months. And then because the alliance of motion picture people, the studios essentially, they know at some point the only way that they can knock down our list of demands is through a war of attrition and getting the membership to start to freak out, and people are losing their houses and getting really desperate, and then they turn around and go to the negotiating committee of the guild and go, hey, we're dying here. Those 15 things that we said we wouldn't accept anything less, we need to accept less. So then the negotiation committee starts to go, shit, and they start to look at it and they go, all right, well, maybe we just go for these 10 things. Yeah. And so then, that's how it works, and that's where we're at right now.
All right, hey, everybody, that's our episode for right now. Jim Herzfeld, everybody, thank you very much, Jim, for being on the pod. I really appreciate it. I'll give you a handshake, and we'll see you next week, everybody. Oh, and Kat couldn't make it, I told you, because Kat unfortunately had some, her Instagram got deleted by accident, so she's going through a lot of stuff right now.
Do you mean I have a charming co-host I didn't get to meet?
Yes, you didn't meet her. She's 6'9".
Wow.
Yes, she's just a little bit taller than you. All right, thanks, everybody.